bureaucracy, but this is the great home of the military bureaucratic establishment. John, before I come back to you, Dennis Cross is on the phone. Dennis, do you hear me? Dennis Cross, do you hear me?
Yes, I can, Peter.
Dennis, I understand that you were in the World Trade Center when either this or these attacks occurred. Am I correct?
That's correct. It was, I guess it was slightly before 9 o'clock, and I work on the 36th floor in One World Trade Center. I work in the insurance industry. Probably hundreds of people in my industry in both of these two buildings.
And what happened?
As I was...
Hey, Dennis, just let me stop for a second. Somebody is trying another telephone on this line. Could they please not do that while we listen to Mr. Cross? Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Cross. Go ahead, Dennis.
Essentially, I was, sort of at my desk working, general office activity, and felt an enormous... it almost felt like an earthquake. Like I could literally feel and see things in the office moving and the floor moving. Immediately after it was some sort of explosion or something, there was an enormous volume of debris and paper. It almost looked like a dirty parade. All of this material just falling down. I was looking out the south side of One World Trade, and everybody in the office was kind of screaming, kind of gathering in the middle, and I went to the window, and I immediately saw one woman who appeared to be motionless, laying on the roof of a lower building next to me. At that point, everybody started to gather their things. They were trying to evacuate people down the stairwell.
Did the electricity go out in the building?
The lights flickered a couple of times, and then it was weird. It was kind of like there was one sort of rush, and then shortly after that there was another one. I don't know if it was maybe the other tower or if it were elevators in the inside. Sort of just dropping to the floor.
Are you aware that one of the Twin Trade Towers has now collapsed on itself?
Yeah, I'm about probably 5 blocks from there on the corner of Greenwich and Warren.
And as we looked at it on the screen here, Dennis, we could see the smoke from this collapse just sweep, billow forward through the lower blocks of Manhattan. Did you have a sense of that?
Completely. I was at that point. I'm a little bit northwest, certainly north, maybe to the west side of Tower 1, and I was trying to get to Broadway. My wife works on the other side of downtown here. I'm still trying to get there, but the smoke, I couldn't see. It was a wall of smoke, and if you were in it, you couldn't see. If you were out of it, you could just see the wall of smoke. It was,
how
never
difficult?
Seen anything.
I'm sorry for interrupting. How difficult was the evacuation?
I'm sorry, say that again, Peter?
How difficult was it to evacuate the building from at least from the 30? There were 110 stories in the building.
I would say that it wasn't extremely difficult. It was just slow going down a somewhat narrow stairwell. If there was any sort of people who weren't able to move quickly, then it literally slowed down or stopped everybody. I was on 36, so it wasn't too terrible. When I got down to the 15th or 12th floor or so, there was water coming in from the doors, kind of at our feet level. And then it just was a waterfall down continually down all of the stairs, probably, in some cases 3-4 inches deep. At that point, sirens and alarms were going off, and then people started to get a little frantic there.
Dennis, thank you very much.
Okay,
I really appreciate you calling in.
You're very
Dennis
welcome.
Krause, who works or did work on the 36th floor of the World Trade Center in this particular tower, which is still standing. There's only one of the trade towers now standing, the other having collapsed on itself not long ago. All of the federal office buildings in Washington have now been evacuated. All federal buildings in Washington have now been evacuated. All aircraft in the skies over the United States have been ordered to land at the nearest airport. All aircraft on the ground intending to go anywhere have been ordered not to take off. Because the country, this is the Pentagon, because we've just seen a moment ago that at least one portion of one side or building at the Pentagon itself has actually collapsed. And as we warned you, the whole business of responsibility, claiming of and naming responsibility would be complicated. And now we've, from the Middle East, a senior official from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine has denied any involvement, any connection to a double plane crash on the World Trade Center. It was, in fact, earlier on an anonymous caller who had called Abu Dhabi Television to say that the DFLP was responsible. So for today, we'll put aside as best we can trying to understand who did it, just knowing somebody who did it. Now, one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center was, as we said some while ago, American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. That has now been confirmed by the airline itself, or at least by their spokesperson, Lori Bassani. It was a Boeing 767. It would, under normal circumstances, if it were full carry, about 160 passengers, including 2 pilots, 9 or 10 crew, but we have no idea yet whether or not the plane was heavily loaded or not.
Peter, big concern now from the scene that the Northwest Tower, the one remaining standing, is leaning and buckling in the northwest corner. They're moving back the mobilization areas, and they're cordoning off the area in a much wider zone now, because obviously they are now concerned about the possibility of a second collapse.
I'm still desperately confused, John, about what may have caused the building to collapse.
As you watch the videotape, it appeared to buckle from the middle, from the point of impact and collapse, which, with no background in architecture, I don't know about the structural vulnerability, but as you see, debris starts to fall away. Then it cracks, and then it just goes straight down. And now they say that the other tower is leaning. If you look at some of the pictures, it appears to be on a slight angle to the right. They say the fire is also spreading downward now through the tower. And I think there's a real decision to make there. I have not been able to hear whether they're keeping people in there to fight that fire, or they're just leaving it empty to let the fire burn itself out, because they're going to have a real problem with people in there if it's in jeopardy.
At the same time, New York firefighters have a reputation of staying until the very end, and if there are civilians in that building which need to be rescued, and clearly there are, then there's no way the emergency services, I can imagine, are going to pull out at this point.
And if the elevators are disabled from that height, there's no fast way out.
Precisely. 110 stories down, and this appears to have occurred. This occurred about 2/3 of the way up. ABC's John McWethy now confirms for us. We've had from an eyewitness, or he adds to our eyewitness, saying that a small plane heading north, which is exactly what our eyewitness a little earlier told us, exploded at the base of the Pentagon, at the base of one wing of the Pentagon. They evacuated everyone inside, and there was subsequent concern, which may have led to the FAA decision to ground everything, that there was concern that another plane might be inbound towards the Pentagon. And by grounding everything, of course, by ordering everything to be grounded on all radio channels to all aircraft that are flying in the area, it puts the military, Pierre Thomas confirmed for me, it puts the military in a position to take aggressive action, as the White House did when other aircraft have come close in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. What it allows them to do is to get a better sense of incoming. If you're ordering everything down, you're essentially clearing the sky so the Pentagon can see what's coming in. Another question that they have to look at here is whether any of these planes might have been laced with explosives to cause the additional collateral damage once the impact occurred.
Yeah, these in every instance, well, I shouldn't say in every instance, certainly in the instance of the Pentagon, it looks more than a single aircraft just exploding on the ground. But again, we don't know precisely the size of the aircraft. We won't speculate on that. But Lisa Stark, who covers aviation for us, confirms that it was American Flight 11 to Los Angeles. There were 90 passengers and crew on board. And there was a second plane. Help me understand this not. So we believe that the 2 aircraft have flown into the trade towers. Both belonged to American Airlines, and they had both been hijacked, and there were 90 passengers and crew on the first plane and 60 passengers and crew on the second plane. That is if there's any doubt about that, someone please contradict me, but that is the report I am getting from our people who cover the Federal Aviation Administration and air travel in general, that there were 2 aircraft hijacked for this attack on the twin trade towers, now the single trade tower in New York City. And on the first, they were both flights to the West Coast from Boston. And the first one had 90 people and a crew on board. And the second had 60 passengers and crew on board.